So first of all, my audience told me about you. I had no idea who you were. And there were multiple people that said, dude, have you heard of this like Amanda woman? Like she's doing, God's work. She's getting in there trying to help guys that are lonely, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I've never heard of her. I watched a couple of videos and I was like, oh my God, this is exactly like the kind of stuff that we talk about. You speak from this very loving, gentle, reassuring, but also like bluntly honest place, which I really respect and admire. So like, I have a million questions for you. I'm a little bit of a fanboy, even though I only found out about you like a couple of weeks ago. But
Thank you. Thank you so much. That really does mean so much to me. I really appreciate that.
I've watched about 10 of your videos. I have some sense of like your mission and what you're trying to do with your channel. But I'd love to hear from you why you have this channel, what you're doing.
Yeah, so I guess during the pandemic in 2020 is sort of when I discovered the manosphere, if you will. That was kind of the inception and the rise of Andrew Tate and everything. And I discovered the black pill ideology and the red pill ideology. And then I think at this time during the pandemic in the area I kind of grew up in and the generation I was kind of born in, I lacked a lot of personal intimacy and connections that I should have like been making with others, like in comparison to what the average person should be doing, if you will. So when I discovered this space, I just felt as though, I wasn't alone anymore for feeling lonely or for feeling disconnected or for feeling as though there's something a little bit different in the air in my generation, if you will. So that's kind of when I started getting into this. And I really just saw such a divide and a lot of negativity out there. And, the consequences of that are quite real because not having close connections and everything, and then just sort of creating more fear and creating more of a wall will only lead to further disconnection. So that's sort of when I kind of decided that I wanted to learn more about this and kind of started discovering what worked for me and kind of trying to apply that to my YouTube channel as well.
You do realize the irony and also the beauty of finding that you could connect with and empathize the black pill community, which is literally the community that says no women will ever understand us or care about us or connect with us.
Yes.
Like there's some beautiful irony in there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why do you help men specifically?
So I think that by helping men, I'm helping women too, if that makes sense, just kind of indirectly. So that's kind of how I like to look at my YouTube channel as well. But this media and the manosphere online, it's more prominent with men and it's much bigger with men. There's many men involved. Not to say that women don't struggle with loneliness too, but I guess the wave or the epidemic or the internet sphere was just kind of taken over by men. And that's where I felt as though a different perspective was needed.
I got asked a bunch of questions like by my audience. One of the guys, Dr. Chad, says, what do you think guys can gain by listening to a woman's dating advice instead of a guy's dating advice? I guess the question there is sort of like, what unique perspective do you feel that you bring?
Yeah, I actually really enjoy the IFS model, which is called Internal Families Systems.
Yes. Hell yes. Preach.
Yes. Yeah. It's a model. It's invented by Richard Schwartz. And he actually used to be a family therapist and a family counselor. And he started, using his systems thinking, he started working with the individual and began to discover that each of us as individual people have a family and a system of parts that sort of play into our psyche and our psychology. And when I discovered that as somebody that's always been big into spirituality and trying to meditate and all this stuff, when it wasn't working, and then I finally stumbled upon internal family systems, I finally felt, oh, this was the missing piece. This was the missing piece to get me all the way. Because when I was looking at life through this perspective of just oneness, I'm just one person, one thought, one universe, when I was looking at it through that lens, I actually was missing out on so much nuance and so much complexity and so much understanding of my own mind. And then a lot of times when we're able to separate parts of ourselves out, then we actually have less of a shame based view of them, knowing that they're not all of us, they're just a part of us.
Here we go. Now we're getting into the good shit. Yeah, we talk a lot on my channel about like shame,
Yeah.
or maybe not taking your thoughts so personally or so seriously. Like a lot of people will have a certain thought, like I'm not good enough or I'm a piece of shit or something, and they'll identify with that thought and say, well, it must be true because it's in my head.
Right.
So it must be like an actual statement of fact.
Right.
I guess let's dive a little bit into shame, because that's something I cover a lot on my channel. You know, religious shame, sexual shame, all sorts of shame. Do you sort of feel when you go into like the red pill or the black pill or anywhere in the manosphere where guys are really hurting, do you just want to give them a hug? Because that's how I feel. I just want to give them a big old fucking hug and be like, it's okay, bro. I know how you feel.
Definitely to an extent. Yeah.
When I look at your channel, I'll tell you the first thing I thought when I looked at your channel. First thing I thought was like, okay, she's full of love. I like this. And the second thing I thought was, holy shit, she's playing on nightmare mode. Do you have an understanding that you're playing on hard mode? Like, not just because you're a woman, but because you've gone to the corners of the internet where people are hurting the most and are the most vitriolic and angry and sometimes hateful towards you because you literally have a vagina. No other reason, just that. You're aware you're playing on hard mode. And I guess the question is like, why?
Right. No, actually, so what I will say is when I first discovered the manosphere in 2020, I started my channel May of 2022, and I discovered this space in 2020. And then I'd say over this past year, this past 2024 really is when I've been discovering my voice and how I wanted to approach the manosphere. But this took years of trying to understand, how do I even gain a perspective in which I can help. So before I even got into all this, I will say I actually took the black pill and I took the red pill kind of vicariously myself in 2020 so I could
Okay.
understand it better. But I went to the darkest places of the internet for that time. And that is how I really, that's when the nightmare mode began, if you will.
Yeah, I've been on the red pill. I went through the red pill. I was a red pillar person. I hated women for a couple of years. I was like, women have it so easy. You know, they never have any problems ever, which is like utterly hilarious as a concept. And what dissolved a lot of that for me was just talking to women. So I very much had sort of the like Andrew Tate, maybe a softer version of that sort of mindset of like, women are things to be used. You sleep with as many of them as you can, and then that makes you feel better about yourself. And slowly they started to, I don't know, like get under my skin, but in a positive way. Like slowly I started talking to more women. Like I'd say questions like, what is your life like? And they'd tell me their struggles. And I was like, I don't understand. The red pill told me that you have no struggles. Like, why do you have a heart? Why do you have emotions? Why do you have insecurities? I thought women were never insecure because you're pretty.
Yeah.
And that should just be enough to overcome all insecurities. And so it slowly started dissolving. But yeah, I can't say that I ever spent a lot of time in the black pill. I've worked with a lot of hopeless and suicidal and depressed people. I was depressed and suicidal myself for about 8 years. So I understand that mindset, but I'm still very intrigued. Like, I feel like you've answered the question, but there's just something still in my mind that's like, you're doing I said it before, you're doing like God's work, and not to blow yourself up or something, but like, I still don't understand why you don't just like do like nice, easy videos and be like, hey everyone, like let's help you with your dating life. Like you're literally getting in there sometimes and going, listen, I know you think you're a fucking, I don't even know half the lingo, but like you think you're a 5 and here's why you're not a 5, or you think this and this and this. Like you're absolutely going into the lion's den in a place where people hate you, like I said.
Yes. Yeah, and there was times where I was getting so much just hate in my YouTube comment section.
Yeah.
That
I know. I've seen your YouTube comment sections, yes. Yeah. And I went back to old videos too. I've like looked through,
Yeah. And, it got a little bit better, and it was just kind of, I just kept on keeping on with the intention, and I hope to help heal. And I just knew that over time, if I even if these people hate me, at the end of the day, they're listening to me. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
my voice is getting into those ears, even if they hate watch me. So, I never took that for granted. And I always view that as a privilege. And so even when I do get hate, just the mere fact that a word or a sentence or that type of opportunity to speak to somebody, to get into somebody's brain, I'll never take that for granted.
Yeah, because you're going up against the ego, and some of the ego is very, very, very entrenched in people. Like, I'm sure you already understand this, but like dating can come with its own struggles, its own insecurities, doubts, fears, and all of that. You're not dealing with people who just hate you and like it's a fight, two people against each other. You're really dealing with people who are scared, who feel backed into a corner, who feel unloved and unworthy and hopeless, and who see you as the problem. And so you come in, like you, just because you have a vagina, you come in and you're like, hi, I love you. I'd like to help you. And they're like, fuck this bitch. Like, why is she like this? I've had a little bit of that myself. I don't think to the extent you have, but I have posted at this point probably 500 articles on the red pill. I spend a lot of time there trying to help people. And the videos that I get the most negativity, my channel is pretty positive for the most part. People are pretty nice. But if I ever do a video about love, like love is all around you, you're allowed to find love, you can love yourself. Or I did a video called Women Are Actually Pretty Nice. And I literally talked about, you have this fear of women, you think they're going to bite your head off, you think you're going to walk up to a woman and say hello and she's going to attack you. They're pretty nice. Those were the two videos that I got the most negativity, when I'm literally just saying women are nice and you're allowed to feel love. And so like, I understand that a lot of people have this sort of twisted view of not just male-female relationships, but also like love or kindness itself. Have you dealt with that a fair bit? Like you try and be nice to people and people almost don't trust you. They're like, why is this Amanda chick trying to be nice to me? Like, what is she trying to get from us?
Right. Yeah. I think that happens a lot. And it's definitely coming from a place of severe trauma and severe pain. Yeah.
Do you feel a lot of guys like don't know that they've felt trauma? Like, okay, here's a word that comes up a lot, and I know it's on your channel too because I've seen it. A lot of my commenters, a lot of you listening, talk about rejection. And the way they talk about rejection is literally like they've been traumatized or they're terrified of being traumatized. Like if they walk up to a woman and they say, hi, you're cute. Are you single? And she says, oh, thank you, but I have a boyfriend. They go through a fucking trauma reaction to that.
Yeah, I would say that I have noticed that. And I would also say that when it comes to men, I kind of look at it from the perspective of generational trauma as well. What the male and the masculine psyche, if you will, has had to take on for years and years and years and years since the beginning of time. And it's this emotional burden of, I can't feel emotions. I can't be emotional. And starting at a very young age, I would say a lot of the trauma also stems from childhood. And I think that it's hard to say that it stems from your childhood. Some people will have a negative reaction to that because they'll just be like, no, it doesn't. That's not how it works. But the reality is the childhood, it's so unconscious. You think it doesn't matter, but the body is what's keeping the score. So all of that stuff, all that disconnection, it's harboring and it's festering inside. And quite literally, you'll get body aches and pains. This stuff will manifest in so many ways. So yeah, I will say that I definitely noticed that. And just men from a very young age taking on the emotional burden of just shutting up, being quiet, and being a strong man.
Yeah, 100%. You have no idea how many of my like coaching clients or just people in the audience will state something that I look at and I say, this isn't even a problem. And that's my answer. But they state it as if the world is falling down. I'll give you an example. They'll say like, I hit on this woman and she said no. And then I felt like a bit of a pussy and I felt bad about myself. How do I stop feeling bad about myself? Or how do I stop taking rejection so personally? How do I stop beating myself up for this? And I'll look at that and I'll say like, it's okay to feel shit after you talk to a woman and she says no. It's okay to feel sad. Or they'll say, I'm sick. How do I make myself be more productive? Why am I being such a pussy? I couldn't even get out of bed today. Why am I such a pussy? And I'll say, it's okay to feel sick.
Yeah.
It's okay to lay in bed and recover. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to cry. It's
Right.
okay to be angry sometimes. It's like there's this automatic assumption that any emotion must be bad and a problem that needs to be fixed immediately. I cannot tell you how many times in my coaching someone will say, I felt shit today. And I'm like, great, beautiful.
Yeah.
Feel that.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you felt like that.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you shared that with us. Why is this not a victory? But you're seeing it as a loss. They'll feel an emotion and say that's a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
I want to ask a little bit more like maybe actionable advice. A lot of your channel focuses on like the psychology and like all of that kind of stuff. What would you say if a guy came to you and said, Amanda, just tell me what to do to start working on myself and start having a better dating life?
I think what's interesting is a lot of people come to me with that intention sometimes. What's the 2 + 2 = 4? What logical
100%. Just tell me the exact steps and then I'll be happy. Yep.
Exactly. What logical dating advice can you give me? Do I just need to use this app at this time with this photo?
Yeah, tell me, what do I say? Tell me the exact pickup line to say to this girl, please, Amanda.
Yes.
What do I say? Tell me the exact words. Yeah.
Yes. And I don't take that approach, I like to take the more explorative approach, looking within, exploring the psyche, what's going on, what's causing these triggers, what's causing these emotions, what's causing these doubts. And unfortunately, when it comes to exploring your psyche in this model, whether it's through IFS or just in general, it's not a 2 + 2 type of thing. It's a journey and it's scary and it takes a lot of courage and it also takes a lot of commitment as well.
Yeah, and I think it takes a lot of self-acceptance and self-love. I guess, what role do you feel like that has in dating, working on yourself?
I think it's the most necessary nowadays because we are so disconnected and because we are spending like copious amounts of time alone as human beings, I think it's the most important thing that we can do for ourselves nowadays is to put in that work on exploring our psyche, so we can show up in life. Because I always tell people we're living in unprecedented times. At the end of the day, we are disconnected in a different way that humanity has not been before. People are using, robots to feel a sense of connection, and that's only going to continue. So it's taking into account that we're living in a crazy, crazy time, and the amount of time we're spending alone, self-work is needed. It can save your life.
Yeah, do you almost feel like, I've had this discussion before, most people in like a Western country, you're in the US, I'm in Australia.
Yeah.
Most people in our two countries are pretty comfortable. Like there's nothing wrong. Even if you're literally homeless, people will come and give you food.
Yeah.
The government will give you food. Like you're not really ever struggling for literal physical survival. And on top of that, we all have phones, we have Netflix, TikTok, junk food, porn, like all of that, which keeps our happiness like elevated to a point where it's like we never drop down to, or even if we do drop down to the depths of despair and hopelessness, it's like, well, I'll go jerk off, or I'll go watch Netflix, or I'll play video games. So you're kept like almost like you're in the Matrix, like you're just happy enough. And I don't think that's nefarious. It's just the culture that we live in, or the place that the timeline that we're at. Do you feel it almost keeps you, or keeps a lot of guys from hitting that bottom and going, okay, I'm going to go out there and make some friends. I'm going to go out there and talk to women, because you can build a life online. You can build a life in video games. You can build a life in the black pill and incel communities and all of that. And it's almost like you're comfortable enough, especially in some of these communities, that you never do go outside and talk to women or go outside and make some friends.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting to think about too. I would say, yeah, definitely. I think that the standards in which we're living in today kind of slows time down sometimes. So many of us maybe feel like the past 10, 15 years has been on pause, and we've just been kind of reliving the same day over and over and over again. And so it can be kind of hard for that other shoe to drop, especially when you have super protective parts that are trying to keep you isolated because that's all they know for their sense of survival.
I love the word you just said, protective. A lot of my audience, and maybe yours too, will say like, why do I keep self-sabotaging? And my favorite thing to say is, you're not sabotaging, you're protecting.
Yes.
You're fucking afraid.
Yeah.
And so your body, your heart, your mind, your soul is stopping you from a potential rejection or pain.
Yes. Yeah.
You can look at that with gratitude and be like, thanks, body. I appreciate you trying to keep me safe. Now, I'm going to take a risk and go and talk to that girl over there, but I appreciate you protecting me.
Yes.
I think when you reframe it as that, it's not so, you don't have to beat yourself up and do this whole thing of like, why am I like this?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Is there anything that you've been really surprised at in either starting your channel or going to some of these sort of, black pill incel communities?
Yeah, I think going to some of these black pill YouTube channels is where I get humbled in so many types of ways.
I'm sorry, I laugh because I've seen your comments.
Yeah.
I've seen your the comments you get. Is that what you meant? Like literally humbled? Like shut the fuck up.
No, not like that. Not like that. Just I'll lurk on certain black pill channels and I'll listen to these men's stories over, and we're talking decades of loneliness, like years on years, some very extreme cases. And it humbles me a lot. Just hearing their stories, especially the people that are older that have been alone for so long.
Is that sort of what you felt, when you were going through it at the start? Like you said, that's how you started, finding these communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was feeling a lot of loneliness, and so I can relate in that type of way, if that makes sense. But it's just hard. It's just hard sometimes because there are people out there that you wish that you could do more, but to an extent, you just kind of have to appreciate them for what they say and the insights that they can give you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, one of my favorite authors is a guy called David Hawkins, and he was a clinical psychologist and a spiritual teacher. And he had a patient that he just wanted to do more for her, but she just wasn't ready to for whatever reasons. And he had this epiphany where he's like, maybe it's not my job to fix her. Maybe my job is to love her. And I definitely get that sense from you when I watch some of your videos. I can definitely see, I emailed you this and I said, I can see you're trying really fucking hard with some of these guys. And maybe they're not at a point where they're, ready to listen or something, but I can definitely get a sense of like, all right, Amanda is still giving them lots of love.
Right.
I think a lot of the time that's transformative.
Yeah. And I think this work takes years. It takes a long time to reshape your psyche and to unburden your parts and to get your parts in a new role. It takes a really long time.
If there was a guy that was maybe at the start of this journey, like wanting to be kind to himself or wanting to work on his self-love a little bit, where would you tell him to start that journey?
Well, I think that therapy and coaching is a great place to start talking to somebody. I think being vulnerable with just one other person can be life-changing, or if not life-changing, practically very useful and very valuable in and of itself. So I would say talking to one other person, you kind of got to start there. And I really am passionate about IFS. So if you can find somebody that's trained in IFS or somebody that is familiar with the framework, perhaps even trying the framework by yourself, I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, and to be clear, a lot of therapists are. It's like very common, like most therapists that I've ever talked to or been friends with. I'll blast through a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Phoenix says, I'm not sure how to feel about her because all the advice that got me laid came from other men. I'm sure you've never heard that before. You should never ask a fish how to catch a fish. Like,
no, I've heard that so often.
Can I just interject? That statement, which is a statement that people say, basically they're saying, don't listen to a woman when it comes to dating advice. And they say, don't listen to a fish on how to catch a fish. Like you should listen to a master fisherman. Women aren't things you're trying to catch and fucking eat.
Yeah.
The analogy doesn't work.
Yeah.
A woman wants to fucking date a man.
Yeah.
It is two people coming together and saying, would you like to do this with me? Would you like to benefit my life and I'll benefit yours? That's not the same thing as catching a fish. So terrible analogy, but
Yes.
yeah, I guess the question there is like, why should someone listen to you? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah. I get that statement so much. And I guess you can kind of look at if you're in the boat of thinking, oh, she's just the fish. I'm not gonna take her advice. If you're really tuned off from it, then that's okay too. But then if there's a capacity for you to get curious about the part of yourself that's sort of asking that question, about the part of yourself that feels as though I don't want to listen to a woman's advice. I'm curious, where does that come from? Because I'm sure it's much deeper than just me and what I have to say here. I think that you could track that back to other memories, or you can ask that part to show you aspects of why it's afraid or why it doesn't want to take this advice. So I would get curious about where that's coming from.
Well, it's based on the premise that I can't trust a woman, that a woman is trying to use me, which is based on the premise that most people have in dating, which is dating is a zero-sum game or a negative-sum game, as in one person has to win and one person has to lose. That's how most people see dating. And so that's why they would never speak to a woman, or they have that resistance to say, hey, can you give me some advice? Because they're like, she's going to try and fuck me over and take from me.
Yeah.
Which is not what dating has to be.
Yeah, yeah. And I completely agree.
I guess what sort of struggles have you been through with dating? What sort of successes have you had? What has your own journey been like with all this stuff?
I actually talked about it on my YouTube channel before, but I've experienced a couple of rejections throughout my life in terms of dating. And those experiences, I think, is what led me to doing this work. So I think it happened for a reason. But a big impetus of this channel was actually being rejected by a friend of mine, a male friend of mine that I knew for years, that was there for me when I was in a very dark time. So this person saw all sides of me, all parts of me, fully accepted me. And then when I wanted to pursue it in a romantic way, he shut it down and kind of like just done. Like it was just done. And from that moment on, it triggered so much of my parts from my childhood and my parts from my parents. And I felt that same abandonment wound kind of reopening all over again. So that was one of like the worst rejections. And it wasn't necessarily because, oh, I missed out on this greatest person ever. It was just because it triggered such a wound that was going to get triggered at one point, whether I liked it or not. It was a wound that was always there. And then so when that happened, all these like dark demons started coming out. And it was to the point where I got to such a low place that I actually began going to therapy myself with a therapist that used IFS. And she saved my life doing this work, saved my life. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I went through, like I said, sort of a similar journey back in the day. Do you feel like that whole process, you know, going through that with that guy, you know, having all these feelings for him and then him turning you down, do you feel like that was ultimately maybe what you needed?
Yeah, it was what I needed at the time because it hurt me so bad that it made me heal. And I was in a space where I wasn't going forward in life in general because I wasn't healing. And it was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the final straw. And it was the thing that got me to sit in front of a therapist and pour out all my deepest, darkest issues I've been harboring for years. So in a way, that rejection saved my life as well.
I'm assuming at the time, though, you didn't feel like that.
No.
Like the millisecond it happened, you know, like, thank you, namaste. I appreciate you saying no to me. Yeah, great, good job.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. No, I thought the Earth realm was like absolute hell when it happened.
No, I know. Yeah, that's how a lot of people feel. Obviously, your audience and my audience. Like, it really does feel like the end of the world when someone turns you down, or you don't get that job you want, or you step on the scale and the weight's gone up over Christmas or something. Like, it really does feel like hell
Right.
And it's hard to look forward, or it takes a bit of practice to look
Mhm.
forward and say, you know what, I don't know.
Right.
I'm going to let go and see what happens. Maybe a month from now, this will be the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Mhm.
I call that surrender. Is that something that you talk about a little bit in your channel? Like surrender, letting go, not trying to control everything all the time?
Honestly, not that much, but I really should because I've been recommended, I can't think off the top of my head, but I've been recommended a book about letting go and getting more into
It's not called letting
surrendering.
go, is it? Like
Maybe,
letting go, the pathway to surrender, with a yellow cover. If you
possibly.
say that book, holy fuck, that is like one of my favorite books of all time by
Okay,
David Hawkins. I
I
bring that
gotta read it
like
then. Yeah,
honest to God. And I resisted that book so much because it's literally called Letting Go, the Pathway to Surrender. And my beautiful ego was like, fuck you, I'm not going to surrender. Let go. No, fuck, that's quitting. That's
yeah,
losing. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
highly recommend that book.
Okay, very cool. Okay, yeah, I'll definitely read that. I'll definitely read that because that is something I've been wanting to talk more about. I heard of the circle of control, so I'm semi-familiar with
Yes,
that
yes.
concept. Yeah.
It's sort of summed up nicely in the Christian Bible. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's circles of control.
Yep.
I'll control the stuff I can, and the rest, I'll do my best. Like, we're not talking about just being passive and sitting on the couch staring at the wall. I'll do my best to control what I can, and anything I can't, hey, that's not my business.
Exactly. Exactly.
Do you feel like being in some of these communities that we talk about, black pill, incel, red pill, do you feel like encountering some of those sort of, I don't know if I want to label them negative mindsets, but let's just call it that, those sort of hurt, painful, pain-filled mindsets. Do you feel like that's helped you with your own sort of, I guess, resilience, but also working on yourself and those parts of you that you can see in them?
100%. I think my own YouTube channel helps me so much as I'm giving advice to other people, it's healing for me just as much.
Do you ever get this? The way you're saying something in a video, and as you're saying it, you're like, this is really fucking good. I might do this after this video is
Yes,
finished. Like, I'm
yes,
going to start doing this.
yes. No, literally, yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Like hundreds of times, because
Yes.
you've been doing your channel for a while, but I think you had big breaks, right? Like I went back and looked. Your
Yeah,
first video was years ago, but
yeah. I had a couple of gaps in between. Yeah.
yeah. How has your view of men sort of changed since starting the channel?
In a weird way, I know this is gonna like maybe turn some people off what I'm about to say, but I guess I found so much relatability in men and women. I think we focus so much on what makes us different that weirdly I've just been just awakening so much to what makes us the same in certain ways, just manifested differently, if that makes sense.
I love you for saying that. Yeah. I talk about the Venn diagrams. If you imagine men in one Venn diagram,
Yeah.
women in the other,
Yeah.
there's overlap, but we often focus on the outside parts.
Yes.
Men are like this, women are like this. We do it with race and everything else, but men do this and women do this, and therefore they'll never be able to understand each other. It's like, but what about all the parts in the middle where they overlap? Like
Yes.
men and women have insecurities, men and women have struggles, men and women have hopes,
Right.
dreams, they want to be loved and all of that kind of stuff.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
hmm
I guess, do you have any examples that have come up for you? Maybe something crazy that you've seen in the red pill or something you're like, holy shit, like they think that only men go through this, but women do too. Or I thought that only I was going through this, and it turns out men are struggling with this too.
Yeah. Well, I think the one just like grossly basic example was actually from the black pill community. I always thought, I dealt with a great deal of body dysmorphia throughout my whole
Mm.
life. And this actually was also a byproduct of loneliness too, because it's weird, but the mind will manifest itself in certain ways when you're going through trauma and when you are disconnected and alone. And one of the ways that it manifested for me was body dysmorphia. I couldn't accept, like, my bodysuit has been my worst enemy throughout my whole life. And I even had health issues with, I had a really bad ankle injury where I couldn't walk for like almost half a year, and that like changed my life. And so I thought that men never cared about their appearance because they were men. They didn't have to. Like, I thought it was only a woman's thing. And it was like, because men are the visual creatures. And so when I was a teenager in high school, I really thought that women were the only ones taking on this burden of body dysmorphia. I never imagined that a man would have any sort of body dysmorphia looking in the mirror. I thought that that was crazy. And then when I got into the Black pill community and I found so many of these men having, similar body dysmorphia, similar unrealistic expectations for themselves and unrealistic standards of what they have to look like and what they should look like, that was a huge eye opener for me.
Oh, 100%, yeah. I've worked with clients that literally are bulimic and, bodybuilders that look like gods to me.
Mm-hmm.
But they're just like, yeah, but my left bicep is slightly smaller than my right bicep, and therefore I'm a piece of shit and I'm an absolute zero and no one will ever talk to me. Do you find a lot of guys in your audience maybe focus on like coming up with an arbitrary number for themselves where they're like, I'm a 5 out of 10, and it's based on just a bunch of things that they cherry picked, and then they go, because of these traits, like I'm 5'6", so therefore I'm a 2.
Yes.
Or my face is not perfectly symmetrical, so therefore I'm a 3.9 and no one will ever date me. It's very like all or nothing.
Yes. I would say, sub 5 men is a term that I use a lot on my channel. And also discovering Wheat Waffles' channel from back in the day, and when he was doing face ratings and everything, I sort of viewed that this is a whole outlook. This is a whole worldview. This is down to a science for some men, how they rate. And they don't just rate themselves, they rate everybody else. To me, it just goes to show how kind of sad our culture and our world is, that we're at the point as human beings where we're just valuing ourselves purely based off aesthetics.
But not even full aesthetics. It's just like they'll cherry pick one part of it and say, okay, let's rate the face, therefore you're this. And it's like, but the rest of his body could look like a god.
Yeah.
Also, it implies that there is some objective standard, like God came down from the heavens with a big white beard or something and says, all right, you're a 3.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a 4. You're a 5.
Yeah, people believe the genetic component to it. Yeah.
I say all the time, you don't need every single person on the entire planet to find you attractive. If you're trying to sell a house, you're just looking for one buyer.
Yeah.
There is someone out there that will find you attractive. And even if literally no one on the entire planet found you attractive, which I don't even know how that would be a thing, you could just go to the gym and maybe dress a little better and improve something. Like, I guess on that note, do you talk about like the general sort of, I want to call it self-improvement, but maybe we'll call it like physical improvement? Do you talk about that stuff on your channel? Like, do you talk about go to the gym, dress a bit better, or any of that? Or do you tackle more of the like psyche, self-love stuff?
I don't, because that's again, that's going more so into practicality in that realm. And I try to keep, and not to say that there's no value in that. I think that there's tons of value in that advice too. And I think that there's also a lot of channels and a lot of people covering that kind of advice. So for me, it's just kind of, I try to present something that's not really my forte. But I know that other people really do give amazing advice about that practical stuff. But I'm all about what's the trigger? How do we unburden this part to find the self-discovery and get it changing? I'm all about the inner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you started out at the point that took me probably like 4 years of coaching and content to get to. You already started out with the self-love stuff and encouraging people to look after themselves, be a bit kinder to themselves, work on their psyche, work on the spirituality stuff. I started out as like hyper masculine. Like I was basically I literally was a red pill guy. So I was like, say these lines, do this thing, like here is the 1 + 1 = 2 practical advice. And that was all I really talked about. And slowly as I started doing more content and becoming a coach and stuff, I just found that a lot of guys would come to me and they'd say, tell me what to say to a woman. So I tell them, like, just say this is what I say, it works perfectly. They'd go and do that. And then they'd just keep coming back and be like, none of this is making me any happier. I've had a threesome. I've had a lot of sex. I've made money. I've done all the things that were supposed to make me an alpha male or whatever.
Yeah.
But something's still missing.
Yeah.
And then I would get in there and talk to them and listen. And oh, it turns out this guy doesn't fucking like himself. Maybe that's going to make it difficult to enjoy things. Let's work on that. And I started seeing more results helping people with the self-love stuff. And so I've sort of, I won't say pivoted my channel, but opened up over maybe the last like 3 years to be a lot more of the kind of stuff that you started out covering, like the self-love mindset stuff. And I've just found that that has the most impact. I think there's a place for the practical stuff, of course. But like you said, there's lots of practical advice on the internet. There isn't as much, there aren't as many people on the internet just saying, I'm here for you, I'm listening, I care about you, and I love you, and it's okay. And you did a video specifically saying that. It was one, I watched that video like 5 times from you. I was like, holy shit, this is the video I want to ask her questions about. It was called, Why Do I Help Men? Like, why do I choose to help men? And you literally started out by saying, the reality is I probably don't know as much about dating as you. Like, you men are probably more educated than me, so don't come to me for the practical steps. But I'm here because I care about you. I went through some struggles. I love you. I care about you. I'm here to care about you. That's what I'm offering.
Mm-hmm.
There is such a place for that. Would you say that a lot of men are just, like I said, missing that? They just want to know that someone gives a fuck about them. And if it's this Amanda woman, amazing. If it's Andy, that's amazing. But I just want to know that I'm not alone. I'm not a fucking zero.
Yeah.
And someone actually likes me or loves me or cares about me.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I definitely try to get vulnerable, and especially in that video. Yeah, and I think that a lot of people sometimes can sometimes be victims of their own mind. A lot of us can live with an inner tormentor in our mind that just torments and augments and changes like reality to the point where you're living in hell every single day and you're just waiting for it to be over. And so just getting to that point, I think that there's such beauty in being able to change that inner tormentor in your mind into your inner best friend.
I guess where would you start with that?
It's very interesting, but as much as we have inner critics, we also have inner champions, if you will. And our inner champions, I love getting in touch with both because I think it's just as important. And I haven't done a video on this yet, but I was planning on it soon. But I was actually following one of Jay Early's sort of meditations on inner champions. He said, go inside and think about the people in your life that have truly supported you and have truly believed in you and have truly helped you. And it's weird because at first you're not going to get a bunch of people popping up. It's like, wait, who has, and then you kind of wonder, oh, well, why did I have all these inner tormentor thoughts? But sometimes it just takes one person to look at you and believe in you and say that you have something, that you have a gift, and that you have something, you're capable of more than you know. But so often we don't have that. We don't have that mentor, even from a teacher. We don't get that sometimes. Some of us do, some of us don't. So I really, really enjoy discovering how your mind can help you sustain like an inner champion kind of mindset.
Yeah, or what can also appeal to guys is like the underdog story.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's that little part of your mind that's like, yeah, I know I'm hopeless. I know I feel depressed. I know life sucks and all of that. But wouldn't it be cool if I could turn it all around? Like, I think there's always that little flicker of hope. And you kind of said it before. People might be hate watching your channel, but they're still watching. Mm-hmm. I've had this discussion with some of my audience where they're like, it's completely hopeless. And I'm like, is it? Why are you watching my channel then?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like, if it's hopeless,
right.
You wouldn't be watching.
Yes.
You wouldn't be on a self-improvement channel if you really thought it wasn't fixable.
Yeah. And also it's, it's not over till it's literally over. You know what I mean? And I tell people this is going to be sort of a hero's journey in its own right. Kind of when your psyche is in a state of fear and having the courage and the patience to transform that state of fear to love. I mean, what else do you have to do here?
Do you have any like cool success stories in your like community? Is there anyone that's come in completely hopeless and then a few months later has a girlfriend or he's feeling good, or like what are some of the success stories?
Yeah, I'd say that I've experienced a lot of success stories in my individual coaching sessions, if that makes sense. A lot of mental breakthroughs and a lot of strength and a lot of vulnerability. And I'm very humbled to be in those sessions and to learn from my clients, but then to also watch them tread vulnerable waters that they haven't treaded in their whole life, I think is very inspiring for me.
Yeah, what's cool is you're sort of almost a practice for them, whether they realize it or not. Like if they can be vulnerable with you, and the reason that they can with you is because they trust you, because you've shown on your channel, I'm trustworthy. If they can be vulnerable with you, they can do that on a date with another woman. Like they're literally role playing or practicing with you, even if they don't realize it.
Right, right. That's why I make this joke on my channel, the semi-serious joke to hug a tree. And it sounds ridiculous, but to go out there and to find you can barely even say it, a
Well, a
feminine looking
feminine
tree.
looking tree.
Yeah,
Fucking hell, Amanda.
name it, hug it, and you would just be surprised what that can do. And I mean, quite literally pretend it's a real woman and hug that tree like you haven't been hugged before. Put all of the weight that's on your shoulders on that tree.
What you said is beautiful. I'm really struggling to not make a body pillow waifu joke. But yeah. No, it is. Like, honest to God, like, a lot of this stuff is just, I don't know, letting people have the permission, letting them give themselves permission or helping them give themselves permission to be vulnerable. Like, half the questions I get on my channel, I say this all the time. People ask me something about a woman or about a man, and I'll say, what would happen if you just said this to the person instead of me?
Right.
And then they go away and they do it. They say exactly what they just said to me. They copy paste. They go, but how do I say it? And copy paste what you just wrote to me. Copy paste that to the other person.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds clumsy. Yeah, I know. Good. Vulnerability is copy paste it. They come back and they go, oh my God, we had this 1 hour conversation. It was amazing. She opened up to me about blah, 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 blah. It was perfect. It was great. I think a lot of people have this barrier between them and other people where they think, all of my words have to be perfect. I have to be perfect with how I express my emotions. I need to be very careful not to be too emotional, but I can't be too cold. And like everything has to be perfect. And it's this game that people play. And what I love about your channel, and I try and do the same on mine, your channel strikes me as one where, I don't know if you've ever said this, but you're like, I can't be bothered playing games. Like, is that a decent summary of your channel? What if we just don't play any fucking games and we just tell the truth?
Yeah, I would say so. It's really about getting to the bottom of it, because this goes so much deeper than just dating or just a guide for getting a girlfriend. I mean, this is about your pain and the loneliness that you've gone through in life. And again, we're living in an unprecedented time, an unprecedented culture. A lot of people blame themselves for why they're alone, but it's just not simple. It really is difficult, and you are going to go through this sort of trippy journey by yourself. Even when you're working with a therapist or a coach, it's going to be you in your head doing that internal work and getting to know your parts.
Yeah, for sure. Would you give women the same sort of dating advice? Like, I know your channel focuses on men, but
I would 100% give a lot of women the like similar dating advice. Maybe women have different, not that's like being super general, but maybe women deal with different types of issues. But I think that the internal family systems model for women can be just as powerful.
on another note, I got a question. What is up with the tarot cards? You know how you always show tarot cards when you're speaking. Are you using them for like inspiration? You are, right? Because I see you sometimes shuffling the deck. You'll pull out a card and then you'll freestyle off that card.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. But yeah, I was like curious what you thought of that.
At first, I just thought you had like a nervous tick or something because you're shuffling them. And I was like, is she okay? Like, she seems really nervous. And then you pulled out a card and then you start freestyling off the cards. I was like, okay, holy shit. This is like fucking stand-up comedy, what's called crowd work. She's like pulling out the card and then freestyling off that.
Honestly, a lot of people hate the tarot cards. I'm not gonna lie. I've gotten so many comments on my channel, Amanda, put the tarot cards down, or I was just listening to what you had to say, and then I saw a tarot card and I exited out the video. I deleted the app. Like, a lot of people hate the tarot cards, but for me, I just think they're so fun. I love the visual aspect of them. I love what the cards have to kind of say. I don't take it too serious. I think a lot of people think I'm maybe trying to do some sort of a like witchcraft or something like that. It's not like that. It's really not serious. Yeah. Yeah.
I like it because you are freestyling off them, right? Or do you write notes?
Oh, do I freestyle? Oh, yes. Yeah. Sometimes I write notes though.
Mad respect to you. I freestyle most of my videos too. For people watching, like it's really freaking hard to do. It takes a bit of practice to be freestyling what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think the tarot cards are kind of a useful tool for me to help freestyle.
Yeah, I like it. It's like spinning the wheel and whatever it lands on. I got to talk about that.
Yeah, right.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, honestly, nothing comes to mind. These were some really great questions, though. I really appreciate that. You're very good at interviewing.
Hey, to be fair, give credit. Half of these questions came from my audience. A lot of them asked these questions. We got a bunch of good guys in there.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
So, girlfriend guide number 4 guys on YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram, but especially YouTube. That's the main platform. But I also have an Instagram and TikTok with the same handle, as well as girlfriendguide4guys.org to get in touch with me for coaching.
What are your favorite 1 or 2 videos on your YouTube channel? Videos that you'd recommend people go watch if they want to figure out who this Amanda lady is?
I really like the video you brought up earlier.
Yeah, that was my favorite. I literally watched that like 6 times. I showed that to like 3 of my friends. I showed that to Emmy. She was like, oh, this is pretty good. I was like, yeah,
awesome.
Let's interview this lady.
That's so awesome. Mom Issues Modern Men Face. Real Men Cry. I like that one too. So those are the few I'll recommend.
You don't know how many times I've sent that to coaching clients, that video.
Real Men Cry?
Yeah, that was a good one.
Thank you.
The book that I talked about before, Letting Go by David Hawkins, the one with the yellow cover, he has an entire chapter about how men struggle to cry and how letting go of grief and all of that can free you up to start, feeling some of those higher emotions and love and all of that sort of stuff. So you will definitely like that book.
Right. Yeah, I definitely have to read it. And yeah, crying is so underrated. It can really help heal your body. It's just so important to let the emotions out because they'll harbor.
No, 100%. For years, I literally would cry maybe once every 3 to 5 years. Women would always say, crying is very it's cathartic. It feels nice. It helps you let go. It helps you surrender. It helps you release. And I was like, nah, women are stupid. And then as I got more in touch with all of this stuff and started letting go and not being so, I guess, afraid of my own emotions, I got to a point where I was like, hey, wait, this is pretty cool. If you just cry, you feel better. In the moment, it feels intense. And then afterwards, you're like, oh, hey, it went away. I feel better. I'm okay now. So shout out to crying.
Yes. Crying is great. Crying is great.
All right, your coaching, what sort of coaching do you offer? Is it like one-on-one sessions?
Yes, it's a pay by the session. So if you want to just give it a try one time, come back in a couple of weeks, see if you want to try it again. It's pretty chill. Or you can do once a week. It's just totally up to you. I just never want people to feel pressured. I want them to be in control of their healing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I went through this journey myself with my own coaching. It was like, how can I do this in a way where I'm not using sales techniques or pushing? To anyone listening, obviously spend your money however you want, but I can say I haven't done Amanda's coaching, but just from watching her videos and talking to her today, if you like my channel, you're probably going to like her coaching. I'm going to assume it's very, very, very similar to our community and our coaching. Seems to be from the YouTube.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, definitely.
Any final shout outs?
Shout out IFS, really. Shout out Internal Family Systems. Shout out Richard Schwartz. Check out his books. Jay Early has some great ones called Self Therapy. Really just trying to bring IFS to as many men as possible.
And shout outs to crying and shout outs to making love to trees, I believe you said.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you coming on here. I appreciate how much you're helping other people and the love that you're giving to them. I really appreciate your mission, and I'm grateful for you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. It really means the world. I really appreciate it more than words. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for having me.